you ever felt.
Are you listening? Damn.
Each session actually, flowed into the next. And I think here's section is a very good segue for me to get into mine, especially when I link it back to the session on investments. Last year, I did something around investment, and it was actually cool to do something else this year. So today, I am going to talk to you about how you execute your goal. But more importantly, we're going to have a mind shift around some of the things that we used to believe. We'll talk about some behavioral biases that some of us consciously or unconsciously actually exhibit. So you will see, as part of this exercise, we're going to be talking about things that are counterintuitive, maybe not, but to me, they're counterintuitive. But at the same time, they're realistic, they're practical, and more importantly, which I would like to quickly talk about, is that whatever I say is non-prescriptive. As much as possible, everyone here, we all have the way we think, the way we do stuff. So I'm not going to come in here and say, this is how you should do stuff. So it's non-prescriptive. It is for you to internalize it and see how you can cherry pick some of the things we're teaching you or impacting onto you today and use it as part of your life plans. So let's get into it. So there's a plethora of goal setting frameworks, and I think Zazie started off, earlier in a session around, using SMART goal, SMART, framework for setting your goals. And I'm not going to spend too much time there because there's a lot of them actually. There's SMART, which talks about how your goal has to be specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. We have PACT, which is purposeful, trackable, actionable, and consistent. We have LOC and LATAMs, which is actually my preferred one most of the time because it talks about clarity, which links back to some of the things Benito spoke to us about, which is around clarity lens. It's about having clarity around the things you're doing and making it more challenging. But that is not part of what I'm supposed to do today. I'm just telling you that this is my favorite one. We have hard. There's one called hard. That is, it has to be heartfelt, animated, required, and even difficult. We have whoop. That means you must find something concrete and then you express a wish around it. For me, there's a number. For people that I've worked with, I've been friends with, they'll probably tell you that I have a number in my head that I used to say, once that number arrives from a monetary point of view, and in dollars, by the way, that's it. Stop working, even not for myself. I just want to, chill and travel the world, no further work, and that is a wish, right? But it's concrete because there's a number to it. Once that number gets there, then I will see whether it's actually possible not to walk again. But whoop, wish, outcome, obstacle, and plan. And the last one is around OKR, which is very topical in the corporate corridors. When people set strategies, they talk about objectives, which are linked to key results, which are trackable. But more importantly, from a personal point of view, executing your goals can prove very, very difficult or sometimes very cumbersome. Not because they are, but because of how we approach it. So I'll talk about something that is a little bit different. So most of us actually commit to action only when we feel a certain level of motivation. And that is not wrong. Again, non-prescriptive. We want to feel a certain level of motivation. And then once that motivation gets to a point, we feel enough emotional inspiration. But again, let's take it one step back. So you feel one emotional inspiration, maybe as a result of the fact that, you went onto LinkedIn And then you find your buddy from school now doing great things. And all of a sudden, you have all these emotions bubbling up in your body, and then there's so much inspiration. And then because of that, you move on to the next layer, which is motivation. And then after you're motivated, then you want to work. You want to get to action. So we assume that these steps occur in a sort of a chain reaction that goes like this. There's an emotional inspiration that then leads to some form of motivation because they are very strong. And eventually, you drive a desirable outcome. Most people, or many of us, actually work this way. And it's not a bad way to think about stuff. In fact, some of us, especially people, like me that ascribe to the Christian faith, sometimes you wake up and you have this vision, and it's very, very, very compelling that is enough inspiration for you for that day to get motivated and be able to drive the desirable actions. And when I mean desirable action is about the actions that comes out of that motivation. So if you think about it, it looks like this is a three-part chain, but every time this is one endless loop that we're constantly going through. Every time. So you want to feel some emotional inspiration, and you will see as the session has been going from Zazie down to Nito, then here, you will notice that there's a deliberate steps to it, and that means that you're constantly feeling like maybe I'm being motivated, but actually this is not a motivational class. Everything we do here are action oriented. They're not. I'm not. I subscribe to the idea of having some form of motivation. Don't get me wrong, and I think that is why people who are motivators or motivational speakers still have a job, because there's so many people who actually need to be motivated, and it's not a bad thing to have a coach or have someone who is constantly motivating you. But what we're going to do today is to do things differently. Remember, it's not about being prescriptive. It's about telling you that you've done something before. Would there be a harm if you try something else? If this doesn't work, then try, maybe go back to what you know. So what I want us to do today is to move out of this endless loop of chain reaction, where you always want to be emotionally inspired, and then you move to some form of motivational stage, and then you start driving action. But again, your actions that can actually create further emotional reaction, and then you go into this loop. So follow me here. Actions and motivations are actually intricately linked. They are not, you can't isolate them and say one needs to happen before the other. So you want to stay inspired, then you have to quickly start driving action. Action, if you look at the quote there, it says, action is not just the effect of motivation. It's actually the cause of it. So your action, usually because you feel once I'm motivated to do something, say for example, one of your goals is to go to business school this year, and you want to be motivated, because I've seen a lot of people that come to me and say, oh, this guy is doing great things now. Now he's going to Yale. And in the next 2 months, this guy wants to apply to some Ivy League school, which means he's actually dependent on the actions of other people to get motivated before he drives his own goals. And we see this play out every time. Maybe that is not the most common, the most relatable example. But if you look into your life very closely, you're constantly looking to be inspired so you can be motivated, and then you drive some action. But what I'm saying is, action is not just the effect of motivation, it's also the cause of it, and we explore it further. So now that you have this, we have premised it, now you have an idea of where we're going with this. Let's do things differently in 2022. And what I mean by doing things differently is around the way you think about executing your goals. So when you write your goals, right, maybe it's is around buying a car this year, or is about even having more products, more financial products, as we were taught earlier. There's always this temptation to always want to be inspired first. You know, when I came into 2022, one of the things that I told myself was around, you know, to diversify, my investments. And diversification is just a word, it's just a fancy word in the financial corridors. It is the action that you take that actually matters. So one of the first things I did was to say, okay, what does diversification really mean for me in my context right now? Then I decided, once that was clear, the next thing was to determine, how do I do it? I'm a strategy consultant, and that means, in these days, I work 12, 14, 16 hours a day. I don't have the luxury of time to actively manage my investments. I don't have the luxury of time to determine the kind of product that I need to go into. And that is why it's important to constantly find the right financial advisors who can help you around these products. But from an investment point of view, for me personally, I don't have that time to actively say, oh, today I want to learn more about a particular stock so I can take an action. During my days at Allen Gray, one of the things I used to do was to actually look in depth into stocks and different types of other financial instruments, and you spend days just researching one stock, just to know whether that's the direction that the business must go. But these days, as we go older, we don't have that luxury of time. So I decided I'm going to abdicate that responsibility towards the platform. And I decided, okay, this is an action. These are deliberate actions that I'm taking. I'm using my life as an example. I decided I'm going to register onto both local and international, platforms that gives you access to both local stocks and bonds and indices and all sorts. Meaning, there's an action there because now I've decided this is the way to go. But it doesn't stop there. I know that I could procrastinate to the point that this platform just becomes another service that you subscribe to and you just get emails and you're not doing anything. I decided I will now put like a regular withdrawal into that account from my check account, so that when that money leaves my check account and is now sitting in the platform, I know myself, I will not want that money to be idle. That's because I'm conscious about it. I don't want the money to be idle. If it was in my check account, it can be idle. But once it hits that platform, there's a job it needs to do. It can no longer be idle. That is action. So now let's think about it. Don't just sit there. Do something. The answers will follow. Ian said something earlier that, as part of their business, they decided to do something when it was even very unclear. Most of the time we get into muddy waters, we're not clear about what the answers are. The answers are not always obvious. But when you start, when you do something, the answers will follow. Like some of the guys, that I work with, or my direct reports, or people that, clients that I work with, especially, I will use a very derogatory word now, maybe not so derogatory, PowerPoint pushers, consultants, the consultants in the room, you're paid to just pound PowerPoints every time, and I have people who, they want to do everything at once, all the thinking, all the solutions to the nth degree, and then they put it into PowerPoint. And then at that time, it's already becoming late, and then client is on your case. What I do, and it doesn't work for everyone, but I've learned to understand myself that I need to do something, and then the answers will follow. I don't know the answers right now, but I will open that PowerPoint, and I'll put an image there, and I'll start convincing myself this is the story that I want these clients to buy. This is the story. And the more I do it, the more the answers start coming. I can rejig that slide multiple times, but I have started. And that gives me more motivation to do more. So in a nutshell, what I'm trying to drive is that there's an approach to everything. The do something approach to goals attainment. And it goes like this. Action. Remember, action was the last thing from the way we're thinking about. Action. Do something. Get the right inspiration because now you've done something. Now, because you've committed so much energy into that, you don't want it to waste. Most of the time, you feel very inspired. You're motivated to do more because you've started something, If you don't start, chances are that you will never get to a point whereby you feel that emotional inspiration. And oftentimes, those inspirations don't come all the time. Right? I mean, you're going through all the hustles and bustles of the day. Chances are that you're never going to be in a state whereby you're emotionally inspired to do something. But when you start, do something. And if you look at the text beneath, if you lack motivation to attain a goal, maybe to make an important step or change in your life, do something, anything really, but don't do something stupid, but anything really, and then harness that reaction as a way to motivate yourself to do more. Okay, so then what? So now you know this, then what? I'm sure probably you're thinking we're going to now talk about how do you step-by-step guide to executing goals. I've gone through those things, they don't really work. Because they have to be done in a way that speaks to you. You understand yourself, you understand your health, you understand of your limitations, which means, if I start prescribing a plan for you to execute goals, I'm being prescriptive, and chances are people follow these things. So I want to flip it and then introduce certain concepts that possibly, if we look further, that is what has been deterring us from winning or from attaining our goals. So I term this navigating roadblocks to attaining your goals. If you were part of 2020, I believe, 2020 Kickstart, it was around navigating roadblock. And the creative in Tonito actually came up with a map that shows the little blocks that we need to navigate. I hope by the time it comes back, it's going to show those blocks again. Some of the things that you need to consider as you try to attain your goals. And I remember the theme of that session, of that particular workshop, was around navigating roadblocks or something. Life roadmap, navigating roadblocks. So, but now let us examine, not so popular approach to avoiding roadblocks that may have been obstructing us, or may, in the future, obstruct us from attaining our goals. First of all, of this is what I call the subjugation or the tyranny of exceptionalism. If you have worked in the US, or you've worked with people who are from the US, or maybe they're not the only ones, with Britons, this should, when I start explaining it, you will understand what I'm trying to say. If you pick up your phone now and just Google, exceptionalism, one of the first things that will come about that you will see is America's exceptionalism. America believes that they are exceptional at everything, which is not a bad thing. I remember, I don't know whether this my colleague was online. So in our days, former employer at The Economist. So I had the opportunity to work with a couple of Americans, and it was a very interesting journey then, because they all came from Ivy League schools, Yale and Harvard and MITs and things like that. So it was good to actually learn off some of the frameworks and all that. But and it goes back to what Ian was saying around how we see African solutions, and we want to buy, foreign solutions. So we're on projects that has to deal with Africans, and you bring someone who has no African context, but because there's this exceptionalism around someone that's been to Harvard. Don't get me wrong. If you paid for my Harvard education today, I'm on. But the point that I'm trying to make is that sometimes we just assume that they are better, and they're not. Sometimes, and you see, one of my friends, I don't know whether he's on the call now. At that time, it was 2015, 2016, I had 2 master's degree. This guy also had 2 master's degree in MBA. We've been to business school. We were made to report to a guy who had physics, BSc, from Harvard. And then we are told to write a white paper, and he wants to tell me about Africa. That was an interest. That was when I started realizing that they are trained to feel exceptional. And I think maybe it's not a bad thing to start thinking about it. But before you start thinking you're very exceptional, let's get to the reality first. So the subjugation and tyranny of exceptionalism, that's one that we'll talk about. 2 is the entitlement mentality that most of us usually have. And sometimes, maybe these are some of the things that won't allow us to really attain our goals. So let's talk about the concept around exceptionalism. This guy on your screen, most people that love football will probably know him. I regard him as one of the best coaches to have graced soccer or football. Some people think he's past it. People are entitled to their opinion. But there's a sense of exceptionalism around this guy that, sometimes you think his head is in the sand. He says there was a time when he says, like me or not, I am the only one who has won the world's 3 most important leagues. So maybe instead of the special one, people should start calling me the only one. He's not anyone from the US. It's not even, this is a Portuguese. But maybe exceptionalism is not actually an American thing. It's a human thing, Maybe it's something that sometimes we need to put some form of curb on it, because this could quickly get you into trouble. And I'll tell you why. Again, before we read this, let me go back. Let me preempt the next. I want to preempt the next slide. So I'm a Christian, and I believe that my source is God. And I know we have other people on the call who ascribe to other faiths, and I believe you have a source. Whatever that religion or whatever principle you believe in, you probably have something that you ascribe to. That is why you form part of that principle or cult. I hope not. Whatever it is that you ascribe to, that is, you feel that is your source, right? So for me, before I get into it, I believe that I'm uniquely made by God. So I don't discount my value at any time, because I know this is how I am made. But at the same time, I also know that I'm not actually different from the other person. We are placed in different circumstances, but actually, we're just different contextually. We're not that exceptional. Most people are pretty average at most things that we do. And I'll explain. Even if you're exceptional at one thing, so Tonito is very exceptional at building stuff, breaking and building stuff. Chances are that you're average at other things. It's just life, Admin. Exactly. You can be a brilliant business person, but you're lacking in the other aspects of your personal life, marriage, children, the way you do other stuff. And I have some examples here. Please don't take them to heart, but we have even Usain Bolt or Cristiano Ronaldo should walk into this room now, we could probably just abandon this program because we want to take selfies with him. But these extraordinary athletes are often as shallow and dumb like a rock, like when you really engage them, because the moment you take them outside of the context of what they know, they cannot have a conversation. I've met, the so-called celebrities that will pay so much to do influencer, what's it called? Influencer marketing. I have no problems about it. But when you engage them further, beyond what their context, they're just as clear as you about life. But you gawk. We are constantly gawking at them. Someone comes in and we're gawking at them, and we are following every move that they make. But they are as you are. I mean, sure, if you speak to Ronaldo today, he does. We think that they are different. Can you see? Thank you. So the last point there that says we are not so special after all. I'm special in God, my creator, but we're not so special. You need to accept your flaws, because the moment you accept that I have a flaw, that is the only way you can improve. That is the only time that you understand that actually I'm not good at this stuff. If I start spending my energy not trying to prove how special or how exceptional I am, I can get better at other stuff. People that display, okay, now let's move from exceptionalism, let's move into entitlement. This is the most dangerous type of behavior or behavioral bias that we should stay away from. I don't know, if you fall between 22 and 29, you're probably people that have dealt with 22 and 29, they're probably the most delusional set of people who have a very strong sense of self-confidence. And I believe people are going to take offense with this, but the stats shows it. One day I was interviewing this guy, and he says, "Oh, I'm a creator. I like to be in my space. I don't like working with people." Wow. Okay. So I'm seated there and I'm thinking, okay, but you want to be paid by someone, but you don't want to work with people because you have this self-confidence in yourself alone that you can create anything. I'm like, since you can do that, maybe you don't need a job. You should just stay in the confines of your room and be creative. And that again corroborates my 22 to 29. They have this delusional sense of self-confidence. But even people after that age bracket still have the same thing. It's just very prevalent among that age. Entitlement plays out in two ways, and I need you to watch out for this very closely as you start trying to attain your goals. Taneto spoke about things around, the processes. Spoke about, I think the last one was protocols. That is really important because these are protocols, these are guardrails that you put around your goals, around the things you want to achieve. Otherwise, consciously or unconsciously, these things are going to play out and you might find yourself in trouble. Entitlement plays out in two ways. Number one, I am very awesome, and the rest of you are not. So I deserve special treatment. Those are 22 to 29. I know they are going to take offense, but this is where they sit most of the awesome. They believe they are the most awesome people in the world, and they deserve special treatment. The other sets are, I'm not even good, and the rest of you are all awesome. So also, so you don't, people are constantly, being between these two conundrum, whereby you're saying, I'm not so good because this guy is so good. I think maybe I deserve special treatment from God, and we find this most of the time in worship places. whereby people cry to God and say things like, "Oh, that guy, he was born with silver spoon, so I think you need to bless me." We're even confining God to a special way of doing things for us, and that can get really, really dangerous, where you're thinking because you're awesome, you be treated specially. If you're awesome at something, chances are you're just as average as anything and other stuff. You look at a Messi, for example, is great at football, no matter how good some players are. We've seen different types of players come out these days, but none is as, I don't want to say good, because there's even good, even being awesome is very relative. Someone can be awesome at something, and you put them in another context, they're not awesome. That is why you see a football player playing in a small, I don't know whether you have Aston Villa fans on the, you put a player in Aston Villa is the god, is the best player, and then you move him up the ranks to Manchester City, and then he's trying to find his feet. Now he's no longer awesome, So awesome is also very, very very subjective, depending on who is determining or the context of that awesomeness. So don't get dragged. This is the bottom line. Don't get dragged into an entitlement mentality as you go along executing your goals. Whatever framework you use to set them, whatever framework you're using to achieve them, don't ever get into entitlement mentality or believing that you are that exceptional and probably you don't need much from people. A lot of people are scared to accept that they are not so special because they believe that they will never achieve anything. I would like you to read it again. A lot of people are scared to accept that they are not so special. Again, I believe I'm special in God. I believe I'm uniquely created. But when I go into because I'm not living with God now, I'm living in a secular world with other people, and I know that there are some people that have other gifts that I don't have. And which means, what is that thing that makes me so special? Because where do I draw the lines about speciality? So I am good at solving problems, but someone is good at actually taking what I have built and exponentially make it better. So where does my awesomeness stop? Is it because I am good at creating something? So this sort of thinking can be really dangerous. Once you accept that a life is worthwhile only if it is notable and great, then you're basically saying all of us, including you, are worthless. Because what you're saying is that you have to be notable. Great. Think about, Hian was speaking about mosques. How many mosques do we have in South Africa? At least now, we're going to have tens and hundreds of it. But right now, we only have one of them. It shows that in a population of 7 billion people, maybe only 2% are only at a point in time are only going to be the mosque-esque, which means not everything you do, or you don't have to say I have to be notable. I have to. What you should strive for is to become better at what you do. People who become amazing at something do two things basically. Every other thing is, one, they understand their source. For me, it is my God. I understand that everything comes from Him, and I'm appreciative of that fact. Number two, I am. There was a time someone said, "Oh, when you want to hire someone, you should be looking for people who you can, who will not just, go off the rail and do their own thing." And I said, I'm actually looking for people who are going to challenge me, who are going to make me better. Because we often get to this point whereby we're thinking, actually, because I set the rules. Because I set the rules does not mean that exactly that I'm better than those people. Only if we open up ourselves to people that we manage, we will actually learn a lot. So it's about constant improvement and embracing, a way of life that deals that. Now, I'm going to wrap up here, and this is my key takeaways from this session. Number one, do something and harness that energy from it to get inspired and motivated to do more. Don't wait to be inspired and motivated to do something. Do something really. Like, you want to buy a car, go to a garage, you will be surprised that there's so many financing plans that are out there. Remember, I've always wanted, I had this idea in my head that I don't like the concept of owning a car because I like things. You need to understand yourself. If you don't understand, you're going to run into trouble. So because I like the concept of, I like things, and I like the concept of, like a new model comes out. If you see the newer model of the car that I drive, you will be surprised. They've changed everything. And then you drive past it, it's only 1 year. And you're asking yourself, but I bought this thing from you last year. Why did you change all the features? So I've come to realize that is the kind of mentality that I have. So I said, I don't want to own a car. I'd rather do these things around you're listening in a way, And if you walk into this place, you realize that there are so many simpler financing options. But because everything is about, if you want to buy a car, you go to a bank, they look at your affordability and all that. But sometimes when you engage further, if you're really interested in it because you're taking actions, you realize that there might be a better plan for you to get that car. We're seeing the likes of Mercedes now having this thing called guaranteed future value. They have this thing called agility finance, where you finance this car 3 years, you use it within a certain kilometers. When it's done, you bring back their car, you take another one, or you tell them this is it. All the money you've paid is gone, or you decide to buy off the rest of the contracts. Options are available, so do something about it too. Accept that you are not so special after all, and constantly seek improvements in all you do. I want to be like, in my previous life, like I do a lot of research. Like I like doing my own thing. Like if I'm on a project, I want to see it end to end. But as you grow, you are going to learn to start trusting people to do stuffs, and then leave certain things for people. And as Pastor Ian was telling us the other time, showing those research, that is kind of something that makes me feel happy. For you to be able to back everything you say with numbers and with facts. But I realized that, at certain times, because I want to seek improvement in other places, if I keep getting drawn into the little details, I might not be able to manage my clients because I'm getting sucked into the details all the time. And I started seeking, improvement. There's one part of me which I know that I don't really enjoy is business development. But you're in business, you have to do business development. And this year is actually a year where I'm saying I'm giving it more attention. Whereby, someone is going to say no. They will say no. But if you don't try, you will never get. You never know whether you're going to win that business or not. And lastly, around here is avoid being entitled at all costs. Instead, 3 things you need to know: understand yourself, understand your stuff. That is what you do. Don't be a jack of all trades, just running around. Understand what you really do. That someone said, "What do?" You can articulately say, "This is what I do," and you can deliver on those stuff. And lastly, is understand your source, whatever that source is. for me, my source is God. And I'll close here, this closing remark. And was said again by my favorite football coach. Okay, he's now moved on from Tottenham. He's now doing other stuff elsewhere. Yeah, making noise, causing troubles in Italy these days. He said, I am going to make new mistakes. And in between, I will be stronger because I'm not going to make the same old mistakes that I made. Always try as much as possible to fail fast so that you can quickly fail forward. Don't make the same mistake you made, but make them quickly, learn from them, because we are always going to make new mistakes, whether consciously or unconsciously. And then be stronger for it. And this is where I'm going to close. If there's any question by show of hands, otherwise I will bring the conveyor of the program to facilitate the Q&A session, and we will then call it a day. Thank you.